We have a crisis in the world. It's not just America. Low-lying countries like Bangladesh, the Maldives, other low-lying places, they're looking at being inundated. We're seeing storms that, like we've never seen before. We're seeing the melting of the polar ice caps. We're seeing the melting of glaciers in areas of the world, particularly in the Andes and in the Himalayas. We're seeing the melting of glaciers that typically capture moisture during the winter and slowly release it during the summer, keeping rivers like the Ganges and the Yangtze and the Yellow River and flowing year-round. The major, the Amazon, and we see the same thing here. I mean, I live in a river here in Portland. Louise and I live in a houseboat in Portland, and that river, the major mountain that catches the snow around here, Mount Hood, has lost about 30% of its glacier cover over the last 40 years. And as a consequence of that, the risk of our river flooding or being, really, really low, the swings in it have gotten far, far more dramatic. So it's a concern of anybody who lives near water. But beyond that, it's also a concern of anybody who lives near a hurricane area, a typhoon area, any of these kind of zones. And it even gets worse than that, and that is that, if climate change starts massively melting the ice pack in Greenland and all that fresh water comes flowing down into the North Atlantic, it could shut down the Great Conveyor Belt, which is bringing warm water from the southern Pacific around the coast of Africa and up, we call it the Gulf Stream as it passes the United States up to Europe. And if that thing shuts down, it could throw Europe into an ice age, which is a weird and paradoxical consequence of global warming, but that's where we're at. And so in the face of this, there is a major crusade to deny that there is anything going on, that there's any real problem. And James, is it Hoggan, James?
It's James Hoggan. James
Hoggan, I'm sorry. The double G caught me there. James Hoggan is the co-founder of the Desmog blog, DESMOGBLOG.com, and along with Richard Littlemore has written a brilliant book, The Climate Cover-Up, The Crusade to Deny Global Warming. And for those of you watching on Free Speech TV or on the web, I'm holding a copy of it up. James, welcome to the show, first of all.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. Looking through your book, let me just kind of walk our listeners through some of this stuff. You start out talking about how this whole concept of AstroTurf and phony advocacy groups that are really run by toxic corporate interests is nothing new. On page 16, The Age of AstroTurfing actually is the name of the chapter. You talk about the National Smokers Alliance, however, was not a spontaneous outpouring of public support. It was an AstroTurf group. You talk about Burstyn Marsteller, the advancement of the Sound Science Coalition. Riff on that for a bit, please.
Sure. Well, especially the advancement of Sound Science Coalition. I think they are the birthplace of a lot of these AstroTurf groups and these phony, I guess you could call them industry front groups, although they're a bit confusing because they usually have a scientist as a spokesperson or somehow involved in the mix. But it started with this advancement of Sound Science Coalition, which essentially was a partnership between Philip Morris and high-profile big companies like in the energy industry like Exxon. And they declared war on science in the early 90s. And they basically started this campaign to go after science, whether it was on secondhand smoke or on climate change or on packaging or genetically modified foods. They were the ones that developed a lot of these early tools for these front groups.
Was Burstyn Marsteller involved in this? Or was it another group?
The research that we've done found that a lot of the strategic thinking was done by a group called APCO Worldwide.
Never heard of them.
Well, they're big.
Yeah.
In fact, we ran into them when we first started Desmog Blog in Canada because they were involved with a group called the Friends of Science, which is another AstroTurf group.
Is this a PR firm, a lobbying company, an ad agency?
It's basically a public relations firm,
yeah.
APCO.
Huh, interesting. Mark Morano On page 96, I run across the name of a guy who has been a regular on this program for a couple of years. We get him on periodically when he used to work in Inhofe's office and debate. I mean, basically, he comes on and says, "There's no such thing, nothing to worry about." And I throw numbers and facts at him. Well, I don't want to characterize Mark when he's not here to defend himself, but you tell the story of some of the things that he's doing. Passing out literature, for example, at climate. This was in Poland at these climate conferences, and literature that's highly disingenuous. I've really struggled with this because I've gotten to know Mark over the years, and I think he actually believes this stuff. Do you think that I'm being naive?
No, oddly enough, I think there are a lot of people who are part of this climate change denial industry who do believe what they're saying, and sometimes I guess fooling yourself first is the strategy before you go out trying to fool.
Well, there's an old I think it was George Centennial, maybe it was Churchill, one of those old quotes about how when your paycheck depends. Maybe it was a Mark Twain for that matter. When your paycheck depends on something, it has an effect on your thinking. And I'm massacring the quote, but there is that. I mean, obviously. But beyond that, maybe people who are of a particular mindset are drawn to a place where they can get a paycheck for having that mindset. But you document how these basically lies are being laid out.
Well, I find I'm not so concerned with people like him. I'm more concerned with people who clearly are out to deceive. There was a group that was. It was put together by the Western Fuels Association and the National Coal Association. I think Edison Electrical Institute was involved in it in the early 90s. They were called the Information Council on the Environment, or ICE.
Right.
And they were one of these fake grassroots organizations, and they were put together to reposition global warming as a theory, not a fact, and supply alternative facts to support that global warming, in fact, would be good. Mm-hmm. And they basically, on the advice of their PR firm, which is a group out of D.C. called Bracey Williams & Co., went into small U.S. markets that use coal-fired electricity, and they tested messages like these. Some say the Earth is warming. Some also say the Earth is flat. Who told you the Earth was warming? Chicken Little? If the Earth is getting warmer, why is the frost line moving south? Now, we all know the frost line, in fact, wasn't moving south, but that really isn't the point behind these confusion campaigns. They were testing messages not for accuracy, but for impact.
Right.
And they basically are. It's very kind of skilled public relations work. You test the messages, you test the messengers,
right.
And then you find out that industry executives aren't trusted, so you pull out somebody who looks like a scientist, some PhD
this is
hire.
just classic stuff. We're talking with James Hoggan, the author of Climate Cover-Up, The Crusade to Deny Global Warming. This is brilliant work. We have less than a minute left, James. From denial to delay, I thought this was one of the most important chapters in the book. You talk about Bjorn Lomborg and this whole campaign to not kill it, just stall it.
Yeah, something, I think the best example today is the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. They're in favor, on the record, they are in favor of curbing greenhouse gas emissions, but they oppose all legislative attempts to do it.
Yeah, and thus by just basically paralyzing things, the status quo remains the same, and the people in the dirty industries, the fossil fuel industries, get to continue making their multi-million-dollar paychecks, and the world spins out of control.
That's right. And so you basically get down into the details, start arguing about how we should be doing this and how we should be doing that, and you take advantage of the fact that people are very confused. Yeah,
tragically. And in fact, the statistics show that these guys, it's actually working. James Hoggan, his book Climate Cover-Up, website Hoggan, HOGGAN.com, or climateprojectcanada.org. Thank you, James, for being with us.
Thank you.